Meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Apache Junction. The date is Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. Time is now 7 p.m. I invite you to stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Rudy?
Commissioner Barker.
Here.
Commissioner Begeman. Here. Commissioner Cantwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Hanchey.
Here.
Chairman Heck.
Here.
Commissioner Cross.
Here.
Commissioner Gage. Here. All present, we have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is consideration and approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion?
Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Cross.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented.
Very good. Thank you. I have a motion to accept. Do I hear a second? Second. Second. Roll call. Rudy?
Commissioner Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
Commissioner Begeman. Yes. Commissioner Cantwell.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hanchey.
Yes.
Chairman Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner Cross.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. There are no public hearing cases scheduled for this evening, and so we will move on to old business. This evening we have one case scheduled. It's case AM-1-21, presentation and discussion on proposed changes to the Apache Junction City Code, Volume 2 Land Development Code for non-residential use regulations and non-residential use regulations. And Nick?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. All right, let me pull up my presentation. So I have a quick presentation, just a prime discussion. Our general purpose meeting here tonight is to go over any kind of questions that we have regarding these amendments, regarding any of the use table changes. So, as we all know, about 3 weeks ago we met when we discussed the proposed amendments to Section 1-5-3 of the zoning ordinance, which is the non-residential use regulations. At the time, we had a couple different proposals. There was a lot of paperwork, a lot of documents. So at that time, we looked through it a little bit. We had some questions, and there was a request to prepare a more refined version, something that didn't have all these colors and all these boxes, and just for simplicity's sake and to facilitate our discussion, I prepared that and presented it tonight. I have also attached, I still have that version with all the colored changes and everything, just in case there are any questions about where something might have come from. But the focus of tonight's discussion will be the newer document that shows just how it's going to look with a little bit of strike through and highlighting to show the individual uses. And just as a reminder, or to kind of refocus what the planning staff looked at when we were making some of these changes. The focus on a lot of this, especially with the downtown B3, since that was the original direction, was to focus on use categories that bring activity, people, business opportunities to a vibrant downtown. So that, again, we focused on retail, restaurants and entertainment, mixed use, live workspaces, the kinds of things that really bring activity to downtown, make it a destination. And with that, we're moving away, with the downtown specifically, since that's where most of these changes are. We're moving away from categories that don't encourage that kind of active culture. So things like the industrial uses and warehousing, there are certain things that were just allowed in downtown that we don't believe were good planning to include in this case. That includes things like death care services or machinery rentals, things that, you don't typically just leave your house to go up to on a daily basis. Or things like space-intensive low-use facilities for Apache Junction citizens and residents, like RV campground. If you're already living here, already living in your park model, then it just wasn't something conducive to downtown. So with that, there were a lot of changes made throughout the table. One of the big ones compared to 3 weeks ago is that we have condensed the manufacturing uses into two primary categories. There is light manufacturing, and these definitions were found elsewhere in the zoning ordinance. Within Chapter 17, 1-17, the definitions for the zoning ordinance, there was already a light manufacturing category and a heavy manufacturing category. And after our discussion, we agreed that it would be good to base our new manufacturing categories on that. So we can get into that as we go further down the discussion, but that was separated into light manufacturing based on these criteria and then heavy manufacturing based on those criteria. So And with that, throughout the code, there were things that were added, there were missing categories, whether it was a movie theater that simply had no analog. Gyms, we kind of fit into what was known as private indoor recreation, and so we kind of just delineated it, gave things more definition. Or like a farmer's market was another example. There was a category that included farmer's market, but we split it so that the two could be considered differently. So those are the kinds of changes that we made. And then we simplified other categories just for ease of use. As I explained before, condensing retail, since we didn't need to delineate every single type of retail, combining redundant categories. And those were the majority of the changes that we made. And moving forward, since tonight we're still not voting on anything, it was just a work session to discuss this. We have advertised the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. That will be a couple weeks from now, the 27th. As well, the City Council will also have their opportunity to look at that. They'll have a work session 16th, public hearing on the 17th, as they determine. So with that, I can pull up the document, and I would like to address any questions that you have tonight.
Commissioners, any questions?
Chairman, I have a few.
Yes.
Page 1, the third one down for the RV sales, service, and repair. We're saying no to that in the industrial.
Okay, so the third one down.
Yeah. Right there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So,
Wouldn't we want to necessarily maybe have that in industrial, especially for kind of repair and service possibly? At least with the CUP,
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
yeah. No, I think that makes sense.
I,
I
that's
think
my thought.
I would like to ask the commission,
Yeah.
is that a general agreement? I think that does make sense. It was already a no,
I don't see why not.
but yeah, I think it does make sense, especially because, RV repair typically gets,
That's big equipment.
yeah,
Right?
it's
Can
big
be.
equipment. So let me make a note of that.
Could we make it a CUP?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think.
I would
that-
say either a yes or at least a
we should-
CUP.
I think a
type
CUP
thing.
would give
Yeah.
us more latitude than if we're,
right.
Yeah, and I mean even sales I would consider in an industrial area because you can have those generally are some big lots. So
Okay.
and then
So I think that makes sense, and this is the kind of discussion I think benefits us. And I remembered that I prepared a couple notes, just almost as a quick reminder and also for the public's benefit. So whenever CUP shows up on this table, it's
Right.
generally, CUPs come to the commission. I know you all know, but
right.
it's just anything that's generally compatible for the zoning category, but requires an individual review for approval, whether it's location, design, operation, configuration. So,
Right. And
so I agree completely.
And then I got a few more here. We'll just keep working down. They're on the page here, under retail sales and service. The first two there, general retail, personal goods, household goods, consumer, electronic, specialty goods. I was thinking more along the household goods in this first one here for the industrial, kind of like an outlet store for appliances and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe having a conditional use permit aspect for something like that, some of these big outlet store type things.
So do you think that should be remade into a category? So we have included
Either that
some
or just
other-
put a
yeah.
conditional use here for
Yeah.
something like that. That way we could address it on a case-by-case basis for something like this.
Understandable.
And the same thing for kind of like an automotive parts / accessory sales.
Yes.
Because some of these, restoration type automotive warehouses, they sometimes have big warehouses that they sell out of.
Understandable.
And the same thing for like an RV type, if they're selling stuff like that, or some of your heavy equipment type stuff or semi stuff, that kind of, I don't know what it'd be classified. To me, that'd fall under automotive type stuff.
Yeah.
So, and again, I'd say maybe conditional use permitted to where we could address it on a case-by-case basis, would be my thought on those two right there.
I think that
Instead
would
of
be-
saying no right off the
Yeah.
bat to this
Right.
kind of stuff.
Again,
I
I'd go
mean,
with the CUP. I think that gives us,
I think so. I mean, I'm agreeable to any change, really. It's, I more want to hear what everyone has to say.
It wouldn't necessarily be first choice, because when I think industrial, I'm thinking more like to medium manufacturing.
Correct.
Right,
and that you don't want a whole lot
Well,
of
that's
right.
public coming
in
into.
there.
Right, that's my thought too, but again, I know like on these, especially on the household goods, some of these, like Sears outlet used to happen, which Sears is no longer, but that type of stuff.
My only caution there, and this is from previous experience, is we had an industrial park and we allowed a craft brewer to go in. And the craft brewer has an annual festival on a weekend that draws in, right now, last year drew in 13,000 people.
Okay.
But I don't think that would be a bad thing.
We'll take it.
Yeah, I wish we had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We'll take
Well,
it.
I think what Commissioner Cantwell, are you saying more of it's like maybe it's not necessarily an industrial use?
It wouldn't be an industrial, it wouldn't be my
Like-
first choice for an industrial use.
right.
Like, we definitely want the activity, want the people there, but I think a B5 industrial is not like a customer drawing area.
Right.
Right. But like, see, I'm addressing it under these two individual categories.
That's where the cup comes in, yes.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, since the CUP is used to regulate location as
Right.
well, so I mean, sometimes if it's just not fit for it, then that is at your discretion.
And then I have another one. I got a question on page 5. And it's the event center and venues.
Yes.
Yes.
Under B3, you say no.
So the event center and venues was a new category we created. That was meant kind of a capture for things like, and I see why there could be a couple questions regarding this. This was the idea of when you just have, like, we're renting out 2,000 square feet of empty space. That was our idea of event center. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, that's kind of why would we say no to that when we could have it as a conditional use? Why wouldn't we want to draw something in that possibility? If we can pull somebody in for an event or something like that, especially to the downtown area, why would you say no?
I agree.
Same thing with the spectator sports facilities. Again, it's size.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's the amount of land.
you don't want to bring in a 17,000 seat arena, but, a couple of hundred people for basketball or soccer or something like that might be appropriate to bring them in and then utilize the services downtown.
Yeah, I understand. Like the Chase Arena is a downtown use.
Yeah,
So I-
Suns, arena. Plus they do other events there, concerts, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
Well, plus you have people that will leave that venue.
Right,
and will
afterwards.
Go to other areas in
Well, you got
downtown.
before and after, and,
Yeah.
and the people that can't get in hang out. And,
Yeah, any downtown needs a magnet
yeah.
to bring people in, and something like that could serve as a magnet.
And that-
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, may I interject? I think part of the reason we might have not included that particular use is because the B3 zone is of a certain size. For example, a few years ago, when one investor bought the whole thing, there was about 100 acres at that time, I want to say 98 acres. Now there, I believe, is like 72 acres left. So realistically, can we get an arena? Can we get a big venue in the downtown area and still have room for all these other things that we would like to put in there to attract people? Or should we put other types of uses in there, such as multifamily, where there's you create the people or the living spaces for people, and then the shops and the restaurants and the delis and the specialty stores come in afterwards. A big entertainment venue, given the size of our downtown or B3 zone, I don't know, that's,
You didn't specify the venue either,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was
And
my other,
you could make it a CUP. That way, if it's too big for
Right.
the area, it gets turned down. But if it's a smaller venue, that would
I was-
be accommodating there.
I was thinking it'd be a CUP because all the others are
Yeah.
CUPs, so.
May as well.
Yeah. I will, so what Rudy explained was the planner's logic behind it. I will say, and this is something you're going to see soon, because we've gotten a couple requests for wedding venues. And wedding venue wasn't a category that was within this. We categorized them trying to find a space, and this is one of the things that kind of drove a lot of these thoughts. We categorized them as a private outdoor recreational facility, because there wasn't another good category for an assembly or for an event. So we got multiple. One will come to you in just about a month for a wedding venue. The idea was just that they would, and I mean, we expect there to be traffic, of course. I mean, it's expected that there would probably be over 100 people routinely throughout the week, per night, I would say. And the idea was that, like, was this, and I mean, maybe this is too broad a category, since an event center could be a convention center, but a wedding venue probably wouldn't be the right thing downtown. Because, for example, with this proposal that you'll see soon, it's about a 5-acre parcel, and about 90% of it is still desert, because they wanted to maintain the desert beauty. And on the other hand, there's a lot of like indoor wedding venues and things like that, and that could work in the downtown. There's convention centers, and so maybe that needs to be broken up. But I think we're agreeable to allowing that by CUP, because that still affords control.
And if we leave it by CUPD and it says venue, then we can see what kind of venue and all that it is and kind of delve deeper into it, and then we don't have to be so specific.
Yeah, and so I think we're agreeable to changing it to a CUP.
Wouldn't a wedding venue be more under a banquet hall?
And that might be the right way to approach
Yeah,
it.
because any wedding venue I've ever seen will also double as a banquet hall.
Yeah.
Correct.
And, whether it's quinceañeras
We want to add
or
another
family reunions.
Yeah,
You wanna add a
I put
category of just
banquet hall
one
as a
thing?
separate category.
I
Okay, I think that is a good,
Yeah.
guess I'm,
Because that also limits you to about 200-300 seats.
yeah.
but this event center venue where the CUP allows us to determine
Right.
how large we are willing
Right.
to go.
But for clarity's sake, even, it might be good to include that, so. I would like to reiterate, we're reworking this, that's
Yeah,
why we're
that's
here
fine.
tonight,
We're-
so.
This is a work in progress. I think it's very good work.
I will
so-
say, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I will say, one of the things that was mentioned last time that doesn't show up in your copy, but just made a brief change, there's the gambling facilities.
Yeah, I see.
Commissioner Hanchy, I know that you had iterated that, well, why not, especially if sports betting comes back. And I actually did a bit of research.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a tangent, but just for your information. So within April, our governor signed a bill. It was the, I'm trying to remember the formal name of it.
I don't remember.
The Gaming Compact Amendment. So that was signed in April. It will become active in September. And what it did is that it did legalize sports betting up to an extent. Apparently, there's about 20 licenses that will be granted. They'll mostly be located within casinos. But one way or another, there is going to be a form of sports betting legalized again. And that will be the primary change to the gambling law. So whether or not, I guess we don't want to exclude it, should we ever have the opportunity to have it. So I agree with your suggestion that there's potential for that downtown. So I just want to address that since it doesn't show up that way on your forms. That's, I think, the only change like that. But
And then I accidentally skipped one, but I just had a question about it on page 4
yes.
with the educational support services. You have it as no in the downtown.
So in that case, that was one of the existing categories we thought was a little vague. After some discussion, our interpretation of it is that an educational support service is something like EVIT, if you're aware, East Valley Institute of Technology.
Yeah, my son actually goes there.
Yeah, my sister went, and there's a lot of good opportunities there. The idea, though, was that when you have that kind of school specifically, when it's like a technical kind of thing, there's uses like, the welding and a lot of the manufacturing, a lot of the training that they had, while good, we just believed downtown probably wasn't the space for that.
But
Now,
Wouldn't that fall more under the
Under
trade school,
yeah, how
which
would
you have right
How
above
would you
that?
distinguish trade school and educational support service?
Right, that
Yeah.
was, because you have,
and trade school wasn't a category that existed before this, so it's a good question.
EVIT falls under that.
Yeah.
even it would be more of a
Would
trade
trade
school to me, and that's why I was confused on this. To me, educational support services
What might be
would be like helping find like grants.
Yeah,
and
financial aid or
Financial
something.
aid type stuff, more support categories for finding different services
I
like
see what you're
that.
saying.
And why would you say no necessarily?
Office
to that?
oriented.
Well, I think under that definition, we wouldn't. And so that's why we're here tonight.
And that's why I'm just asking this question right now.
Yeah.
Because I was just confused why we would say no.
No,
And that's
very-
why I'm asking what the definition of educational support is.
So I think we might have introduced that redundancy even because trade schools didn't exist, and then we came up with that definition for educational support services. There probably was a little bit of overlap.
So do we,
I don't know if the way to address that would be to add clarification like there is on some other categories, just to say what educational support services are, or to just at least internally have an understanding of what that is.
is that like tutoring services?
Yeah,
You
if
know?
it is, then yeah, I don't believe that would be an issue.
I don't know whether you
in
call it
B3,
like
so.
administrative versus,
Administrative, yeah.
that way it would
Yeah.
distinguish that from,
No, there's the school district has their administrative building on Apache Trail. Right?
No, it's on
it's right by the, on Ironwood by the high school,
Southern, right on
Okay.
the corner.
right?
There's one,
That's a school,
Yeah,
is that a school?
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'll mark it as yes for now. We'll revise that. I agree with your reasoning. I think changing it to administrative services is clearer.
Oh.
Since we read that, and that's again part of the reason why we're going through this, because even the planners it's our responsibility to interpret this. And sometimes when we have a definition that doesn't necessarily make sense, it doesn't service anyone. It doesn't service applicants, it doesn't service us. So I agree with that change.
You guys have done a lot of legwork here to help bring
Thank
some
you.
structure to this, so.
And then one more, my last one, I promise.
Yes.
For now,
He
anyway.
says that every time.
Child/adult care, and mine more was like kind of a child care thing, not being in the downtown area, but I was thinking of it more as like a child care service. Like if you have all this service stuff going on and somebody wants to have some type of child care
As an addition.
as an addition going on to the businesses, or even somebody, hey, well, you go to dinner or you go to pick up this show or whatever, we'll watch your kids for you type thing.
Yeah.
Because there might be a business for that, and maybe we do it as a CUP. And I understand we want to keep the traditional daycare maybe out of there.
Yeah.
But maybe we do, because what if we have offices and stuff, and that's one of the things we want in our downtown area. Do we want to provide daycare in our downtown area for the people that work in the downtown area? I don't think we should necessarily say no, because maybe we do want, maybe there's a daycare in one of the buildings for the workers that work in that building. Because, we're talking some of these multi-use buildings now, so maybe that's something we, at least as a CUP.
Ancillary.
Yeah.
Make it ancillary, like you have several other things.
Well, maybe it's a standalone even for like the businesses in that area.
But it's still
It's
ancillary to the
ancillary.
building
Yeah,
business.
it could be, but,
Still-
I like because we have introduced, there are a few ancillary categories. I think that would be good, because you're right. There is a place for it.
yeah.
We were avoiding, just having it, the standalone.
Yeah, I think that's what you were going after, and I kind of seen it, and I think that's what everybody was thinking, but I'm like, well, wait a minute. This is what we're going after now, and I can actually, maybe the adult care, I understand that too, but, even with these new buildings and these multi-use and, even the projects that's getting proposed along behind Fry's there and stuff, maybe you do need some adult care in there and stuff, so maybe it is ancillary that we go with and stuff. So I wouldn't say no necessarily in that downtown area now.
All right, well, I've marked it for that.
Yeah, at least make it a CUP or ancillary, whatever we want to go with, AUP or.
All right. Well, thank you for your comment.
Thank you. All right, Nick, I have a couple questions. So in the first round, the one draft that you're moving you had different highlighted areas. There was one for specialty retail stores, and didn't see it on the other one. Was that eliminated? Because it's kind of a vague thing?
It was vague, so even though, I'll say this was a question I had writing this particular element. So within the general retail, I put specialty goods, and specialty in general are kind of, paradoxical or oxymoron, but in this case, specialty goods was kind of, this is a store that sells candles. Like, we know Bed Bath & Body Works. That is a form of, it's not a grocery store by any means. They sell a particular item. That's like a specialty goods store. Even though it's not, it's not a grocery store, but it is just another form of retail. And so we looped that in within the general retail category
Okay,
because,
okay. All right, I was-
not to
I was
really
looking for
discriminate
it on
between
its
that
own,
and something
so-
else.
Okay, all right.
And that would include like the crafts and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then on, again, just clarification, on page 2 of the revised document, like the 5th one down, the pet and pet supply sales is a no for B3, but again, pet supply sales could be in anything. I mean, it could be in a.
In a grocery store, you know, you have your
Yeah,
little pet
yeah, I
section.
mean, it could
Talking
be.
PetSmart.
We are-
PetSmart, yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
something like that. So I understand that the selling of pets
Yes,
would be an issue. I just want to make sure that that would be perceived as,
right. And I think there's a couple instances when that kind of thing happens within this table. And if they are here on the category side, then it's generally as a primary use. If someone wants to come in with a PetSmart, as opposed to, because you're right, like even a lot of convenience stores have a little section for pet
bet,
supplies.
yeah.
So it's not that you can't have that product in your store, it's more that you don't operate that as a primary use.
got it, okay.
So-
All right. Next item, and I'm sure this is going to reflect my age, but, that tattoo services, do we really have to have tattoo
So-
services in our,
That was a Supreme Court case about
Oh.
7 years ago. We don't have a say on that.
was it really?
Yo, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I can go on and on about that one. However, that was a Mesa case where basically a family wanted to have a tattoo shop in certain parts of Mesa. Mesa didn't equalize it like they should have been with other types or similar types of personal boutiques. And it was basically a due process problem. And so, they said no to tattoo shops, and that was the problem. And then the Supreme Court said, you can't do that. You have to equalize this. And it's also a First Amendment issue too.
Okay.
Even as a CUP, since that's what Mesa had it as. They had it as a CUP, and they said, no, we don't want that here. And as Joel just wonderfully explained, it became an issue. There are with a lot of these zoning questions that have gone to the Supreme Court, there are certain ways, like for example, we said no in industrial because if it's industrial, it's not like they're called time, place, and manner restrictions. If it's like a safety thing or public welfare, like if you're in an area with factories, it doesn't make sense to have like a consumer service there. And when that's generally agreeable, then that in those instances are only when you can really regulate it. Otherwise, it's a allowed use by First Amendment rights.
Okay.
So
Sure.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gage?
Yeah, so,
I'm sorry.
Well, seeing how we're talking about the T word, you got taxidermist down here.
I have what? I'm sorry.
The taxidermist,
Oh yeah.
you really don't want a
No, you
taxidermist
don't
in
want-
downtown.
Uses chemicals.
Well, just not even chemicals. Boiling skulls really stinks.
No.
Trust me, I've done a lot of them.
No, no.
Brain matter does not go well in the neighborhood. So
Put that beside the
Put that
tattoo
in
shop.
that should be in your industrial area.
Absolutely.
Okay. See, that was not something we were familiar with,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
frank. That's good to hear that you know what it's like, and so would you say it's more industrial then, like a light
Yeah.
Light
kind of
industrial, yeah.
industrial? Okay.
It's in the same category as crematoriums, probably.
Yeah.
Essentially, but probably a little stinkier.
Yeah.
So would you say to remove that from, taxidermist was oddly enough one of the weirder categories in the original where it had a CUP in some categories, a yes in others, and no, and it went back and forth. So there wasn't really consistency. Since you seem to have expertise with this, would you say that it doesn't fit general neighborhood commercial or?
No.
I wouldn't say it fits very well in a residential neighborhood at all. I would say you want to keep it more in your industrial area because it does have smells that is just the nature of the beast, you know.
Right.
Is that
Okay.
a bun?
No. I mean, just animal, when you're having to skin hides, flesh hides, it draws a lot of flies. It draws, there's smells, so.
Makes sense. So with what I've marked
Gosh.
for
sounds
edit,
like fun.
oh, I just changed the page. What I've marked for edit then would be to change these first three, which are more neighborhood commercial, like B1 is the commercial just throughout all of town. B2 is along Apache Trail, B3 is, of course, downtown. I marked those as no for an edit, and then maybe yes in
Yeah.
B4 and B5, since I think that's more.
That would be,
Having brought it up, I'd also add crematories into that same category.
Except for we already have one on.
You already have one, which is why I make the comment,
Right,
as I'm driving down and it's in use.
right, yeah. So changing that, right now they're CUP, or they were yes in B1, B2, and changing that,
Well, the death
Maybe
care
the-
services and funeral homes is a different category.
yes.
so you would say
Okay,
making crematories their own category then?
Crematories is their own category, and that is more in the industrial.
Okay. By CUP, I think
Yes.
in this case, it's something, especially with the smoke and the smells and the chemical, that's something that you would want to,
Well,
Yeah,
If they're cremating correctly, it shouldn't smell at all.
I see.
It
shouldn't
should-
smell, but
But
no.
it definitely will roar as that furnace is fully stoked.
okay.
A quick point, I know Commissioner Gage, do you still have a question?
Yeah, just, could you, on your explanation about the tattoo services, I didn't quite get it all. So basically, it's included because of a court case. Well, how can you exclude anything then? What,
Well, because of that one, excuse me, the name of the case was Coleman. Not Doug Coleman, but
Sure.
it was, Coleman was the name, it was a Mesa. And basically they wanted, it was a mom and pop shop, they wanted to have, I think it was downtown, they wanted it in downtown. And basically, I forget how the first court ruled, but in the end, it went to the Supreme Court. And I think there was issues with First Amendment that was brought up, because that's why the P&Z Commission didn't want it, or the council didn't want it, and they came up with these First Amendment objections, saying, well, it's not First Amendment. No one should get a tattoo, period. That's what the attitude was of some of the decision makers. Because of that, it was not exactly a thought-out process. And so the Supreme Court said, yeah, this is a First Amendment issue. So we're going to say you can have it here. And basically,
so because of this case, tattoo shops are basically allowed anywhere you want to put one?
no, not, I don't think anywhere. And I think you could probably do CUPs if you'd like to. But you have to be careful. If you do other types of places, like nail shops, other types of personal improvement types of businesses, you better treat them the same. I think that's what the ruling basically said. Well, you cannot just outright say no.
No to this one and not, okay,
Yeah,
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
all right, thanks, I'm just confused.
So kind of going in line with that, wouldn't we want to treat basically them like personal care services? And
I
if
think
we're-
that'd be fair. I mean, they are,
Right, and with that, wouldn't we want to kind of have personal care and tattoo services kind of aligned? And why wouldn't we allow, like in a business park, like a nail salon or a haircut or anything like that?
so with what you're bringing up, I believe we are, part of the effort of this was to shift B4 away. Its formal title is business park, but by definition, it's meant to be light industrial. So we're shifting away B4 from business park to light industrial to meet. There's
Should
the
we
name and the
should we just
definition.
change it then too,
Yeah, I think,
while we're doing this?
I think that's a good point. It will affect a couple places in the code, but regarding that, I had I had a brief conversation earlier. Maybe B2 Old West is also a misnomer, because the B2 zone is primarily found along Apache Trail,
From Meridian to Phelps.
yeah, from about Meridian to Phelps, while Old West Highway is actually
Right.
about Phelps onward, eastward. And so there's a couple of these names that I think are
Kind of add to it.
Carry over, yeah.
Instead of business park, necessarily just add the light industry to it if we can't just change it.
right. The reason why tattoos was still included there is because, as we just explained, we're a little hesitant to change it anywhere. But I think under the understanding that we're generally changing this entire zone to fit more in line with light industrial, I think it might be appropriate to change that one to a no.
Well, then if that's
We're
what
just
the intent
hesitant.
is, then make that a no on the tattoos, because we are, then, because, I think we're in compliance with the intent of the ruling, is we're treating it more in line with all the other personal care.
I think that would be a correct interpretation. I'm not the attorney, so
Yeah, well,
that one would be for Joel.
Could you combine those two categories and just include tattoo services under personal care?
We really could, and that
Hair,
might,
nails, and skin tattoos.
and just, put a,
Well, it's not really part, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's personal
I'm
care,
not sure I would put those together.
but I don't know. It's an option. It's not really a, it's a,
So is getting your nails done.
true, and I wouldn't
Well.
call it personal improvement either, because
It's not an option, that's.
Some
a
people
requirement.
would.
some people would, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean, ear piercing would be under personal care, and it's
Yeah.
not really
Yes.
care.
and a lot of them, I
A lot of
guess,
people would
I
consider
suppose they should match because a lot of tattoo places also do piercings.
That's true,
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
not necessarily here.
so that there isn't a conflict, it probably is better that they match, and especially as B4 in general has changed.
Yeah.
I think
Mr.
that's
Chair.
appropriate.
If they're all, I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Barker?
I just have one. You've covered most of the ones that I had looked at. On page 4, you have physicians, et cetera, all allowed in the B3 district, but you do not allow medical and diagnostic labs in that district, and many physicians, especially the newer ones that are coming in, they have their diagnostic labs right with them. They have it in the building next to them, or what have you, as do hospitals, et cetera. So it seems like that should, if nothing else, be a CUP there.
I see. I will say, I mean, you raise a good point, especially since it is yes here. The reason it was determined, why we changed that to a no, is more, well,
Look at Southern.
yeah.
You've got doctor's offices, you've got diagnostic lab. It's at all in the same line of buildings on southern, west of Ironwood. It's kind of a norm to have
it all together.
that diagnostic lab.
Right. I think the question more then is, do we want,
Do we need something like that in downtown?
yeah, the
In our
question is,
downtown center.
should then the physicians, should a medical center be downtown use?
So do we
Right.
need doctor's offices downtown? Should they
No.
not be in B1 and B2? And
Yeah.
have them, they're close to downtown, but they're not right
Right.
in it, and that allows then for them to have their labs, et
Right.
cetera, there.
And I think that's the way to look at it. So it probably is more of a no for the physicians than, it's explicitly because B3 is just this very specific
It is
area that we're
very
trying to
small,
form
so
into an entertainment.
why not get
Restaurants, so
those
forth,
uses
so.
that don't meet that definition that you are talking about, i.e. entertainment, et cetera, those definitions that don't meet those probably don't need to be in B3, since it is such a tiny little area.
Yes. And in that case, I think,
You've got several things that
yeah.
could be moved out.
So in that case, I think it may be B4 as well, especially with the
Yeah,
B4
because we're
discussion we
changing
just
that.
had.
Yeah,
yeah,
especially if
change
it's
that,
light industrial.
Right.
Yeah,
And we've got more room in 1 and 2 to get some doctor's offices with their labs, et cetera.
And I would like to iterate, I meant to just, this was a quick study I did before. I did a GIS, a mapping analysis, and running the numbers of everything. There are approximately about 646 commercial properties in the city.
Right.
Just doing that math, and so that affects this table. Within that, about 45% is B1, another 20% is B2. And now B1 and B2 are very similar. B2, just for information, is more about form because it allows the buildings themselves to be up near to the street, a lot of strip mall kind of development. That's what we see along Apache Trail. So that's what B2 is for. So those two more general commercial, neighborhood commercial zones form about 2/3 about 65% of the total commercial in the city. B3 is about another 8%. So the downtown, it has a few different parcels, and some of this is just the number of parcels as opposed to size. We have a commercial analysis that we'll present to you when it's all finalized, but that shows some of the numbers. And then B4 and B5 form about another quarter. So that's just some context. Most of that is B5. There's very little B4, but we are changing the B4 zone primarily, I guess, in preparation for future zonings, and so that this zone is an appropriate transition should people try and bring in these things. So, because right now there is only 7 B4 parcels in the entire city, and they're all kind of grouped in one place. Some of them are 2 halves of the same whole even, so while it may not seem like it might be changing much now, it's more to prepare the zone for future development, future transitions, and that's just a quick ad amendum.
Thank you. Thank you. Nick, I do have one other, it's more of a, that's a question, I guess. Page 8 of the revised document, in the residential uses, I guess this is more because it's in my line of work. So we have group care homes for the B3 as a CUP and assisted living facilities as a no.
Yes.
Now, I'm a little, I'm assuming part of it is maybe size, but I guess I'm questioning why there wouldn't be at least a CUP for.
For assisted living facility?
I mean, I know the difference, and I
Right.
think you'd really want to have,
I think this goes
Facilities.
back to what we were just talking about when we were talking about the purpose of this small area, more entertainment and that kind of thing. So if you put assisted living in there, you've kind of gotten rid of that purpose. But I think group homes in there does the same thing.
I was just saying, I would make them this, I would say,
treat
make them
them
both
the same.
CUPs, and that way we can opt out of them. It's just, I don't think a group home should be given more
Right, and I agree, and
credence
whether or
than an
not,
assisted living
yeah.
facility.
I think the 2 ways to look at that is either to make the group home a no, or to make the assisted living facility a CUP. So,
I'd make it a no myself. I don't think it has a place there if we're looking for
I mean, I know we're looking for some, residential, more high-density residential, which an assisted living facility can deliver that to you, but it is also, it's a commercial as well, but I guess I would, I don't really care either way. I guess I would just say, let's make them both the
same,
same.
I agree.
Make them the same.
I
Make
agree.
them the same.
You've already ruled out home health facilities. Why not rule this one out?
I think
Home
that
health is
makes
different from
sense.
these. That's not, those are not,
No, I'm not
Home-
talking about the assisted living, I'm talking about the group care home. You know,
sorry, what,
they've already ruled out up above the home health care. So why would they have it separated from the group home or the group care home?
I think,
me, a
I
home health-
agree. I
to me,
think
a
the
home
group
health
care
care-
home should be a no in this instance then.
yeah, I mean, I think a home health care would be the company that would support, provide caregivers to homes and things like, it wouldn't be its own living environment.
Right.
Where these two would be. So, yeah, like I said, I'm fine to make them both no or make them both CUPs, but I think
Right.
ultimately, if we're looking for the higher density residential, then.
I agree. I was actually a little bit surprised to see here, because typically, we actually get, we didn't originally, but within the last couple of years, since I've started working here, we have gotten quite a few requests for group care homes, not in a commercial setting, but within the code and within the state law. It's like you can operate a group care home out of a residential. There's separation requirements and so forth, things found in the code, but they typically are operated out of a home. So I think in that case, it probably doesn't fit here.
But man, they can be dicey too.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if I may,
Joel.
I would caution you to be very careful in this area also. Under the federal and state Fair Housing Acts, I've seen a line of cases that talk about if you say no to assisted living, but you say yes to group home, for example, well, now you're discriminating. That's been the argument in some of these cases. They're not Arizona cases. There's some federal, I think it was the Third Circuit, I believe, I might be wrong about which circuit, but it's definitely not the Ninth Circuit, and it's not, so it's not covered under Arizona, but those cases start, and then what happens is they could also be held in our same circuit and be held against. So if you're going to do it, I'd make it equal. And I would say CUP, but don't say
CUP.
no.
Okay,
Say no to
That's what
each
my
of them.
argument, because CUP then gives this body the discretion at one point based on facts that would be brought forward in a hearing. And then the public could also show up.
What if you say
To
no to
both of
both?
them?
If you say no to both, I think an argument could be made, well, why are you saying no? Are you discriminating against people because they have a health issue?
No.
Or because they're older? That's been the arguments in the cases.
But aren't we saying yes to all other areas, just no to this location?
Yes, however, if you vary between the types of housing, that could be a problem.
So maybe as a CUP,
then I would.
we're not necessarily anticipating it, but I mean, just,
Yeah.
cover our bases,
Sure.
so.
I recommend CUP for them.
Okay,
It's up to you.
I would say then let's be on the safe side and do CUP, so.
All right.
yeah,
No,
Vice
Mark.
Chair Hanson.
And then won't we want to clear up the B4 right there as well and just put that as a no?
Yeah, that should be the case.
Yeah. Since we're kind of realigning. that.
Right, yeah, I mean, we went through hundreds of individual
Yeah.
cells, some things were missed, I believe that's probably one of them.
Okay, Commissioners, any other questions, comments, suggestions?
I've got a couple.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gage.
Going through this, it's very detailed, and I want to commend you on the work you guys have done with us. I think I'm thinking a little bit differently than the other commission members. I sat down and read it and kind of got, buried in yeses and nos and Cs.
No, I understand.
So I started thinking about the old Bashes down there in the Bashes Plaza. And so I got a bunch of questions that are gonna come from this oratory. Currently, it's call it an antique shop, call it a secondhand shop. It's located in the B3, correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
And so right now, that business wouldn't be permitted there with the yeses and nos that are in here. What happens to that business if this gets passed? Do they have to get some special
So if this gets
revision,
passed,
or since they're grandfathered in, everything they can continue running their business the way it is?
they would be grandfathered in. I think that specific use, actually, I think we had an internal planning meeting just kind of discussing the last meeting 3 weeks ago. I think we talked about actually creating a new category. So it doesn't show up on this because this was prepared and then we had this conversation. There are used merchandise stores like, a Goodwill. You're right, an antique store, at some point it was owned by someone else. It could fit into that category. So there's used merchandise, there's antique stores, there's also antique malls, which is when you just have a bunch of, it's just this kind of warehouse where everyone sets up a stall and they sell their own personal antiques and goods and
So
stuff.
I guess my question is, an existing business that
Yeah, so
doesn't
they will be
fit that.
grandfathered in.
they're grandfathered in, if they wanted to expand their existing business, then they'd have some issues. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's fair to say.
Okay, so they're allowed to operate in their existing footprint and go on. All right, continuing on with Bashes then. Somebody comes in and wants to turn that into an entertainment venue. And prior to our discussion here, I was, well, that says no, so you can't do that. So my question is there a process if it did say no for entertainment venue, somebody wants to put a stage there and have a band on the weekend or something, is there a process that they can go through to get the business license done, or does no mean no?
Didn't we say we were gonna do a
I
CUP
thought we were
for
giving
that?
some,
I think we
Want me to
changed
try,
that
Nick?
to a
So
CUP.
for this instance, would you mean like a event center? I guess we didn't necessarily have entertainment, so.
A stage, a band.
Right.
Yeah.
So we didn't necessarily, or let's see, private outdoor. I guess in this case, that would be,
Will it be in?
The way I'm about to answer your question doesn't answer your question. The
Well, let me rephrase my.
the category you're talking about is actually, it's actually addressed somewhere else as an allowed use. That would be like an AUP. However, with regards, we can use a different example of something that is a no. Trying to think of something that's not like egregious, but if it was a no use, honestly, the way that operates is typically through a rezoning. Now, how that happens in some place like the old Bashas Plaza, where it's one big parcel, I don't know if there actually is a mechanism. If it is a disallowed use, the way the zoning code operates, if it says no, then it would not be allowed there without a rezoning. And in that case, it'd be kind of hard to rezone the entire Bashas Plaza for that.
You could replat it.
And that's one of the mechanisms that it could happen with, but generally without changing the structure of the original parcel. So, I mean, if you're looking at one suite within the old Bashas Plaza, then it is difficult to put a no use in there. Well, because typically you would rezone in order to get that use allowed. For that specifically with music and events and so forth, that has different allowances elsewhere in the code. So entertainment is definitely something we're trying to bring in. That's why I think the event center was somewhat vague, but especially when it comes to entertainment, it should be a CUP. So I agree with that change. But generally, that's how it operates.
Okay, so no means no unless you really want to.
Right.
Unless that entrepreneur wants to go
Right.
run
So,
for mayor or something.
and generally we have questions. That's what most rezonings come down to, is people who, hey, I want this here, and this parcel says no. So a rezoning is typically required. Alternatively, there is something known as the plan development mechanism. So, and you see plenty of those where within the city of Apache Junction, there are a lot of zoning parcels that would be like B1/PD. That PD means plan development, as you know, they come through you. And the plan development is an ordinance that alters the zoning regulations for that specific property. And so in this instance, it is actually, that probably would actually be the first way that they would handle that. If it was one of those uses, it makes sense, then they could apply for a plan development, which is an overlay district, and one of the allowed uses of a plan development mechanism is to alter the palette of uses. So in that instance, they could go through that. It's a lot like a rezoning, so I mean, it still applies the way I described it, but and it would affect the entire parcel, but that is the mechanism, the due process mechanism in order to change the uses for this parcel. So.
Well, and you've got several things that cover that possibility anyway,
There.
not the least of which is your performing arts facility.
But for uses in general, that's
Yeah.
generally how it works.
No, Commissioner Gage, Commissioner Gage, you're still asking, a couple more.
Yeah.
Okay, let's finish them up, and then we can.
Yeah. So and earlier we talked about the entertainment venues, and we were going to make that a conditional use permit anyway, so we kind of moved off of that
Right.
question a little bit. On page 10, table 5.4, there seems, I don't know, maybe it's not a contradiction.
So we didn't really change the bulk table. There was just an amendment for when there was a mixed use project projected. Then
Yeah.
what was your question? I'm sorry, sir.
So, maximum residential density, you've got a bunch of numbers on that, in that table. And back up on page 8.
The third, yeah, I see. So on page 8, this was just introduced because of the downtown. So it's a 13 minimum, while it is a 40 maximum.
There's a maximum.
And that's just something that's currently missing from this. We might, down the road, when we do a full rewrite, we'll probably clarify that a little bit more. There are no minimums in this table. The minimum was introduced further up, and that minimum actually came from the general plan regarding the downtown mixed-use residential.
So that's not a contradiction, you guys know about it.
That's right.
Good. Page 6, under utilities, you've got water and sewerage facility is a no in the B3s. And I guess my question is, what constitutes a water and sewage facility, because you're gonna have to put sewer lines in.
Of course, yeah.
You may have to put pump stations in, so I just wanna make sure we're.
Right, accommodating.
We're not, yeah.
We
We have,
water
we
treatment.
had conversations with them about that.
I'm sure you
Um,
have that under control.
That I think came down to a definition. Maybe we should just change it to a CUP because obviously if it needs to be there, it needs to be there. I mean, we're not going to argue against that. But if it was going to be a sewage treatment facility, definitely shouldn't be downtown.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it should just be left as a CP because obviously if it's not something that should be there, then it won't be allowed there, so.
And in the same vein, Peter was talking about his profession. My former profession was mining, and you've got mining is allowed in town somewhere that should say no. Everywhere.
I see what you're saying. I think there was a legal matter with that. Are you aware of that, Joel, or?
Of the mining part?
Yeah, was there some kind of right? We didn't touch that because maybe it was
That makes
ignorance on our
sense.
part, but.
But those are,
You've got the mineral rights, you're allowed to get.
Mr. Chair, yeah, if you have the mineral rights, it's difficult to say no. However, in the industrial, those are industrial uses, correct, for the CUPs? So that gives you the discretion, once again.
Okay.
So I think you're okay there. They'd have to have the mining rights, though, in a deed, in a mineral deed.
Oh, yeah.
That would be presented to the P&Z to prove that they have the rights already.
A bunch of licenses to operate in town. And then telecoms, I don't know where it is.
Right below, right.
Below that.
Telecom towers,
That's
so it's okay on city property, but not for the private folks.
So, and I kind of thought that would come up as a question, because I had a question, this one was introduced by another planner. So generally already, if someone wants to put in a cell tower, it's already by a CUP. And again, I'm not saying this is right, this is how another city did it, and so we were like, well, let's copy that over. The idea was is if the city owns a piece of property, like this city complex right here, and for some utility reason, like in order to provide service, I guess it would be a city council decision, they say, or I don't know exactly how they would come and be presented, especially since the CUPs go through you. If the city said, hey, we own this land, we need this here, then it can happen. So I think that was the thought process behind it. We were comparing it we brought that over from another zoning ordinance in a different city. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that because I had a similar question.
Can I address that a little bit?
So we're taking your word that you're basically gonna hold the city to the same standards as you would a private person, and that's what I would expect.
Yeah, and I understand.
You know, I think you
Commissioner
will, but-
Commissioner Cantwell, you.
In a previous community, we had that exact same question, and rather than building the cell towers, we had above-ground water towers. And as long as the towers were structurally strong enough to have it, that was a better place to put them than to build a new tower. So, but no, we don't have the high-rise water towers here, but that's where that type of discussion comes from.
But right now, presently, there are a number of cell towers that are built on private land,
Right.
okay? But we're saying that still can be done, but as a CUP versus on
And that's-
city-owned
yeah.
land with.
And that's how they typically operate because normally they're about 60 feet, and so they typically go through a conditional use permit process.
Right.
I guess the question is if the city-controlled land should be treated any different. I had that question myself. We had just copied that over from another city, and so that's open for discussion, really.
I
But
mean, to make it a CUP versus ES?
yes, yeah, for the city. I mean, essentially, I mean, it will come before
I
you.
think one is for city-owned and one is not.
So in that case, we could probably just delete that category, so that way all telecom,
Yeah.
so.
You probably, because you don't have a lot of public facilities here that lend themselves to it.
Right. I do know the idea was that if the city needed it and owned the land, then it could be operated as kind of like public utility. But I think the city won't have any problem getting through the process as it is. It was more just to facilitate, if there was a public need, a public utility, it would be to facilitate that. But we can just, that was a new category that was introduced, something as easily just to strike it out. Since it doesn't exist currently, it doesn't have to.
If you brought it over from another community, it's because the other community had tall enough facilities to satisfy that need.
I see what you're saying.
And then
Mr. Chairman,
one more, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gage, clarification on your question. Are you suggesting that if some telecommunications provider wants to locate one of their facilities on city-owned property, that they should get a CUP?
I think that regardless of whether it's city or public, it should have the same scrutiny and go through the same process to get approved and installed.
Is there any reason why the folks who do locate here, are they under a separate contract? Is there some kind of an arrangement? Is there something, something we can talk about here, or what, how do we handle those?
Mr. Chair. Okay, those two towers, they're tall, aren't they? They're 80 feet tall. I call them the Shook Hoffman Towers. Those are two former city managers. And what they saw at the time, it wasn't, hey, they blocked the mountain. That wasn't the issue. It's how much money does it bring in for the city. Basically, they were leases, and they are long-term leases. In fact, they've been amended since I've been here. I think the one on the left showed up first, and then the one on the right, I might got it wrong, but they were 15, 20-year leases. Then they actually got amendments. So some of those amendments are 35 years. So the city did not go through a CUP process, and it shouldn't go through a CUP process. It's city land. It should not apply to the city, the CUP process. Another way those were brought in were because the access and the use of cell phones. That's how it started out. It was pagers, then cell phones, and now it's these stupid things, okay? These are smart things, though, right? And the phones, I didn't bring my phone. I actually have a new phone, by the way. Believe it or not, it's not a flip phone anymore.
No.
They don't even sell those anymore.
Yeah, they do.
And I could get one, and I could reactivate the other one too, but, so anyway, technology has changed, there's now a bigger need to have the towers and the access.
Right.
And so, I'm not sure you want to limit it, because if you do, you will get complaints from the telecommunication industry. They will go to Congress, and they will basically say, Congress will zone this for you. Sorry, and that's what they're starting to do already. So you don't want to really push back too much on the towers. And, you know, technology is getting better, so the towers don't have to be as tall. But, you know, with the new G5 that's coming out, now it's G10 or whatever it is, you probably do need these, and I wouldn't restrict it too much.
Actually, I think we were doing the opposite. We were getting rid of the one that had all the cups and the yes, and we were just putting it to the other one that said all yes.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
I
I understood it as the other
I
way.
wasn't-
Everything was cup.
I
Oh, I thought we were
everything
doing it the opposite.
I was going
going
CUP
cup.
for everything, yeah,
Oh, I
but,
thought we were doing
okay.
yes to everything.
No.
Why did we have
In
two?
actuality, the towers on city property are a service for the public.
Yeah.
These are a public service.
right.
And
Well,
they
if
should be able
Verizon comes
do
to me,
this.
if
I agree.
Verizon come to me and said, hey, we got a good spot right here on your property to put up a cell tower, well, that would be a public service also. But I would have to go through a CUP
Right,
process,
that's correct, right.
where the city could say, no, we don't want it, but yet it's still a
But,
public service.
Joel, you're saying that
Right.
the telecommunication industry could force the hand of the city in that case if they really wanted to put up a,
They've actually tried in legislation,
They have,
and
okay.
federal, and there's stuff going on right now with the FCC where they are trying to, basically,
all right.
they will create the zoning for you, and they will decide where you can put these things. And there's also a big one down by Public Works Yard. So the city agreed to put these in where there wasn't a lot of residents, but the CUP process should not apply to the city itself. Now, if you're in a community and it's highly dense and it's one-story homes, and now someone's they come to Mr. Bagman and say, hey, I'd like to put up that tower because I'm going to get $20,000 a month.
Is that how much they give?
They get more than that, actually, in some of them.
I've got 60 square feet they can put.
Yeah, I'm sure you
I thought
do.
an acre
So
and a
the
quarter.
20 years
So-
ago, it was 1,800 a month.
So your
Right.
CUP would
And it'll
not
be painted earth
allow-
tones
Put it in the
too,
middle of my horse arena.
So
with palm
that's,
fronds.
that's the question.
Okay.
You know, that's a policy question of this, of the planning and zoning. Do you want to say, well, okay, in a residential zone, that's not compatible with everybody else. Okay, this one person's getting 20,000 a month, but it looks like hell and it's ugly. That's one argument. Another one is, hey, free enterprise, put towers at every single residential lot. Well, towers don't work that way. They don't get that close except for the Hoffman and Shook towers. They do. They have different users on them.
Yeah.
They do have different users. We, in the city, actually owns one of them. The other one is a lease, so.
And folks, if you recall, one of the last amendments that we made to the wireless ordinance is we now allow cell towers on mobile home park properties through a CUP. Before, they were strictly commercial properties. City was okay, but anywhere else, they had to be limited to commercial. Now they are allowed on public, semi-public, which includes the churches, and now they are allowed in the mobile home and RV parks. We have 125 mobile home and RV parks, so there's
'Cause I remember
plenty of places to put
We
towers.
approved one that's up on Valley there that.
Yes.
You know, they disguise them and stuff, but
Right,
yeah.
and there's a
yeah.
couple of churches that also
Right,
have cell
yeah.
towers.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, so then I think what we're saying is basically, as it relates to the city, we're just gonna say yes. But for commercial, residential, we'll just leave them as a CUP then.
I think that would be a good approach.
Okay, all right.
I honestly don't know how much commercial land the city actually owns. Most of the city land is already the PI, which is it's already kind of allowed there. So, as Joel explained, I didn't know all the history behind it, but I think that's what, this one was one that was added by other planners, and I think that was the basis for it, so.
Thank you.
And then are we getting rid of that other one, or?
I don't think we are.
No, we're
It's
just
still gonna be two
Just to
categories.
keep it as,
So then what's that for? Because it says telecommunications facilities, antennas or towers.
And then the other one is
On land,
just,
it's
just land owned, it's
by
city
the
owned.
city.
That's, I think, that's distinguishing between city owned versus
Private.
not private or commercially owned, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. I get it now.
Okay. Did you have any other?
One last
Okay.
just comment that, again, you guys done a great job on this thing. I think it needs to be a living document, because 10 years from now, we're gonna be
Of course.
probably
So
making the
change.
big revisions to it.
Yeah.
And then go back to the bashes, and does no mean no, you need to
right.
have some kind of mechanism to where it gets to be
Right.
adjusted, and it's,
Regarding that, because you're completely right, like we, as planning staff, we 100% agree. Looking back at the origin of this, we were directed to primarily change B3 to orient the downtown towards these downtown uses.
Yeah.
And it just made sense to like, well, we're looking at it all at once right now, so we'll, rather than very incremental Band-Aids, this is, I wouldn't say it's finalized either, because you're right. And we have a future rewrite planned. I think the city council has already allotted some funds for that even. But, so right now, we're just kind of looking, this is one step towards that. And the proposal to include more than just the downtown is just, because you're right, like a lot of it needs to be living, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. So we will very much keep that in mind, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cantwell, you
Chair,
did.
Yeah, going back to an earlier, regarding outside music and so on, I think that should be banned totally, unless it's, in a totally remote area, should not be downtown, because it tends to be too loud. And it is
Isn't that
difficult
the place for it?
difficult to control, so.
I see what you're saying. Right now, it is regulated, if it is private, it is regulated under CUPs.
Yeah,
And if it was, there is a separate category. If it was a city event, then it's an AUP. And if it's a city event, then, it'll be like a day or maybe a weekend thing.
yeah, it's been an issue. We had, again, where I used to live, we had an outdoor concert theater that was an endless source of problems with neighbors 3 miles away. And I also remember a couple years ago, we went to the Symphony in downtown Phoenix, and a rock station was having an event at a bar across the street, and literally when the Symphony was not playing, you could hear
Yeah.
the rock station inside.
Right. I think in this case, just for clarification on, I guess, our opinion of it, it's not that the uses themselves should be disallowed, but that there needs to be strict controls
Yes.
over the sound leakage, sound known as sound pollution, when it is an issue. So that comes down to a couple different code matters, like even the, not property maintenance, but in a few places within the code, noise and noise violations, they find their home in a different section of the code.
That's been an issue certainly here in
Right.
the past, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions, comments from the commission? Nope. Okay, I think we've covered a lot. Nick, thank you for your time and your attention with this, and thank you again for the time that you put into doing this. I think it's a huge step forward, so.
Right. So I'll take taking your comments into consideration and working them into this. You will receive one more, I guess, draft when we have the public hearing in a couple of weeks. And so if there's any questions that come up, in between the time, we still have a little time to review it
Okay.
So please
Very
let us
good.
know.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Rudy, do we have any new business?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. Information reports. The chair has no information or reports. Director's report, since Larry isn't here, is there anything?
The only thing that has come up new recently is there is going to be one more public open house on the state land D.R. Horton deal. Joel, do you know when that is? Next Wednesday or?
I don't know if they finalized the date. I don't know if they did, but there's discussions of doing it.
We'll send you an email when we find out when and where that's going to be. But I
Has there
believe it's
been-
next week.
Has there been decent participation from the
Uh,
public?
the first
I
one mostly
went-
had folks from Mesa. The second one had maybe 30 people there. And
I went to one that was put on by, well, it was over at the Gold Canyon Methodist Church.
well, that's
That was
totally
for-
different.
That was for Pinal County, though.
That's-
That was, okay.
Yeah, that-
Okay,
that was
yeah,
for-
you're talking about Superstition Vista, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll send you an email when we find out exactly when that is, if you'd like to attend.
Very good.
Just don't group together to avoid open meeting stuff. I'm
Yeah, well-
sure Joel will remind us, but
Yeah,
that's about the only new thing, Mr. Chairman.
He'll
Very
be
good.
there
Very
spying
good.
on us.
Thanks, Rudy. Yeah, right. Okay, very good. All right, selection of meeting dates, times, locations, and purpose. Do
Sure.
I have a motion?
Sure.
Yes,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on July 27th, 2021 at 7 PM in the City Council Chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard. In the event there are no items to be brought forward to the commission, these meetings may be canceled, notification of cancellation properly posted, and the commission notified by staff.
very good, thank you. I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Roll call, Rudy?
Commissioner Cross,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
Commissioner Begeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell,
Yes,
Vice Chair Hanchey,
Yes.
Chairman Heck.
Yes,
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
very good, thank you. All right, motion is passed and meeting adjourned. Thank you.